So it has been about 100 days, or approximately about 3 months, since President Donald Trump took office inside the White House from the making of this video. And ever since then, approximately about 120 something thousand workers have been, specifically federal workers, have been either laid off, fired, left unemployed, or is at risk of being left unemployed. So they either already gotten fired or unemployed or laid off or lost their jobs, or they're at risk of this situation happening. And over several hundred other thousand workers in other industries have also been laid off or left unemployed as well since he took office. And this is just talking about, but of course today's video is going to be very focused, talking about federal workers inside of our country. So the big idea is that the agenda for today's video, what I really want to talk about is everything going on in the world of unemployment, especially centered around federal workers. I want to talk about the current situation there and also about where we are headed. Because based off of the situation of what's going on right now, the trajectory is looking very, very relatively bleak. We hope to see improvements, but at where it's based off of where it's currently at, it is going through a struggle right now, and it's actually getting even worse, just speaking very, very honestly about the situation. They are estimating that potentially over 200,000 people, federal workers, so over 200,000 federal workers are going to be left unemployed in the coming months as well going forward by then, and that even more people in other industries, so non-federal workers, are also going to potentially be impacted as well. So with that being said, let's just get right to this video and make sense of everything that's happening. But as always, before we begin, if you guys enjoy videos like this, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell so you guys can get more updates about this. Feel free to leave a comment about honestly anything, and let's get started. So the background story to what's going on right now inside of our country and that world is that it really goes back to when President Donald Trump first took office back in January of this year, so January 2025, where he essentially announced a lot of plans about trying to reduce the size of the government. The motivation behind the reason why he wanted to do that was because first off is that he wanted people that genuinely wanted to be a part of his administration to be a part of his administration, but he also wanted to kind of reduce it in order to save money so that he can reallocate that money to do a lot of his other plans as well. So as a result, because of that reason, he decided to implement or introduce a brand new buyout program, so an unemployment buyout package program, where he was essentially going to pay federal workers a certain amount of money or their salary worth up to several months in order to voluntarily leave their jobs by choice. However, the story is that the result, now that we're looking, now that we're several months into the future and we know what actually ultimately ends up happening, is that a lot of workers, in fact, most federal workers, did not take that package by a very massive majority. And I think there was a fear because at the end, and it makes sense in a lot of ways, because right now at this time, there's just a lot of economic uncertainty going on in our country where people felt that even if they took that severance package, the problem is that by then at some point it's going to run out, and there's a lot of uncertainty if they're going to be able to find a new job by then. So very, very few people actually ended up taking out that buyout program. I did make another video already talking about that buyout program, so I'll probably leave that at the end screen so you can watch it after you watch this video, because it goes into details more about that program, but especially if you happen to be a federal worker. But the idea really is that because of what ended up happening, a lot of people did not take up that package. And so the story is that now they did try to give a lot of federal workers a second chance to take that package. But even then, the result is that most people still did not take up that package. And because this program is not retroactive, it means that even if you took this package on later on, it means that because it's not retroactive, you would not be able to receive the payment from when it started back in January and was first introduced. Instead, you would just be receiving payments starting from when you entered into this package to approximately, they wanted to do it till about September of 2025, so September of this year. And that's really the background story behind what's happening. However, they've noted that now the real results that we have to see, and these are where the numbers really come in, is that during this time period, approximately 120,000 federal workers ended up being laid off as a result because of everything that ended up happening. So in other words, these are 120,000 100,000 workers that did not take that buyout program package, that ended up being laid off, that ended up being fired, or that ended up being left unemployed slash in danger of being left unemployed right now at the making of this video. And it is estimated that a lot of analysts predict that in the coming months, so in the next maybe 2 to 3 months, it's going to potentially reach about 250,000 people. So approximately 200 something thousand people, federal workers, will be left unemployed if something doesn't particularly change inside of our economy at this time. And the significance about why this is so important is that what this really shows us is that things, simply put, they're getting a lot worse. And I think is that it's getting worse before it gets better. We hope for a recovery and maybe things have to change. Well, I mean, things definitely have to change for things to kind of pivot. But at this current time, the trajectory is just not looking to be where we want it to be. Now, in terms of why this is going to be very impactful to us is because also it's important to notice is that the country's largest employer is the government, followed by retail, and then followed by tech. So a lot of the layoffs that have been happening over the last couple of months have been in the government industry. And the impact is that it can potentially damage the economy even further, because the logic behind this one is that because if people have less money to spend because they keep getting laid off, then it means that especially while everything's still going up in price and getting more expensive because of tariffs and everything that have been happening, it means that it's not going to be a very great recipe to be in. People are going to be spending a lot less money. Businesses are going to be starting to suffer because people are spending a lot less money, and a recession is going to potentially follow, leading to the collapse of a lot of different markets inside of our country. Things such as like the housing market, the stock market. We saw the housing market and the stock market dip a little bit. And even especially most relevant, most of all in this particular video at least, is going to be the job market that's going to be impacted, since this video is talking about a lot about unemployment and layoffs. Now, they did say that the largest sector within the government that was impacted was actually a lot of the people that work in the veterans department. So people that help with the veterans, these are going to be the people that were the most impacted by the layoffs. I think they said from the 120 something thousand people, approximately 70,000 people. So basically right around half of the people that got laid off through this, they were actually people that work specifically in the sector of the government related to veterans. So things such as like social programs and benefits and things that are supposed to go out to our veterans and people that served, these are going to be the people that were the most impacted within the different branches of our government. Feel free to leave a comment if you guys have anything to share at any time throughout this video or about this situation, because I know it is a very, very difficult situation to be in for a lot of us, because again, the economy at the end of the day, everything is very, very tied together going back. As people start to struggle, businesses struggle, our economy struggles. I know the housing market is a little bit interesting, because the housing market, a lot of people, it is very fair to say is that things have gone so expensive with the housing market that I think it would be actually a really nice thing to have the housing market crash a little bit. But certainly other areas such as like the stock market and the job market, these are areas that we should be trying to improve, that it's currently struggling, and it's going through a lot of difficulties trying to pivot and change course from what it's going through right now at this time. Now, the next industry that's expected to struggle in terms of where we are going into the future is that they do expect that the next couple industries that will be struggling, first is going to be in retail and trucking, and then followed by tech. So in other words, the tech sector, which there are so many videos online about, is expected to experience even more layoffs going forward. But to focus a little bit talking more about retail and trucking, is that essentially UPS, they said, had to cut about 20,000 jobs across 73 locations, and hugely because Amazon was experiencing a little bit less business than usual because of the tariff situation, which makes a lot of sense, because tariffs, it's a tax. imposed on foreign countries for importing goods into our country. And so if a lot of those countries are going to experience higher costs in order to do such a thing, then it means that a lot of the goods on Amazon come from China. A lot of the goods on Amazon come from China, they come from foreign countries, and so because as a result, they are going to be impacted, and if they end up impacted, then retail and trucking, that industry is going to be impacted as well. And now to share some maybe personal thoughts, and I mean it does make a lot of sense, is that because as me, for example, and this is the personal side of this video, if you don't know this, is that essentially I used to run an e-commerce business back several years ago. The reason I had to walk away from that business was because it was very, very difficult to make a profit margin because of the increased costs. And this was back around COVID, right around the pandemic when this happened. So I can only imagine if during the pandemic, it was so hard to sustain and make a profit margin because of what was going on. Today, in present day, now several years later, because of the tariffs, because of a lot of new policies that have been going on in our country, it is probably just going to get even worse. From inflation to tariffs to things that are happening, things are just going up even more further in price, which is just damaging the economy further. And as me, just going back to mention, is that as someone that, ran an e-commerce business, I felt it very firsthand about what was going on and about how difficult it was to do the math in any kind of business model that you tried to pursue, but especially in e-commerce where the cost to run such a business model is very high. There are some businesses in e-commerce that might be generating $1 million in revenue, but then what happens is that when you look at the cost, they may actually be losing money in some cases. So it's not that they're just not making a lot of money, but they're actually going to potentially be losing money because of how expensive the cost is to run the businesses that happen to be in the e-commerce space, in the world, in that particular world. So I think that's the biggest thing to share. Now, in terms of where maybe to end this video talking about where we're headed from here is that it's just a world of uncertainty right now. That's really the long story short is that we hope that unemployment improves and gets better. At this time period, it is struggling to get there, but we just have to ultimately see what ends up happening in one of the future episodes of The Kevin Show. So with that being said, that's pretty much what I really just wanted to share in today's video. So if you guys found that insightful, hopefully, remember to smash the like button if you guys haven't done so already. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. Feel free to comment anything down below, personal thoughts about anything, or if you wanted to say hi. It is always great to hear from you guys. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.